Quidditch is one of the most beloved things that came out of the Harry Potter series and the wizarding world in general. Even before the movies came out, this fantasy sport was on the mind of everyone who read the books. And let's just say it's become somewhat of an obsession for most Potterheads, which is why it was a massive shock when Quidditch was one of the first things that got cut from the movies. You might be thinking, wait a second, they still include multiple games and most importantly, Harry's first game in the first film. That's true, but did you know that it is drastically changed from what's in the book? In fact, that entire day, starting at breakfast and ending with the trio talking to Hagrid, is completely revised for the film. Everything from Snape's limp to Harry's stunning catch of the snitch. And today, I'm going to uncover every little detail that you missed. So grab a hold of your favorite broomstick and let's go for a ride. My name is Gibby and welcome back to episode 10 of Movies vs. Manuscripts Harry Potter Edition. This is the show where I analyze the Harry Potter movies scene by scene and compare them to J.K. Rowling's original book series. Today, as you might have picked up already, we are to Harry's first Quidditch match in the movie. This is a fun set of scenes which showcase the Golden Trio's entire day, and the chapter does the same thing. However, there are some key plot points that are altered, removed, or added for the convenience of the film, and I'm curious to know what you guys will think of these changes by the end of the video, so be ready to leave your thoughts down below. Speaking of comments, shout out to this commenter from a previous episode. Each week I'll be showcasing one of my favorite comments from a previous video, so make sure to drop your comment below once you're done watching. As always, I'll cover the changes across the 4 categories of characters, timeline, location, and plot. But first we need to recap what happens in these scenes. Picking up from where we left off last week, we once again have overlapping scenes. Last week, I addressed Harry receiving his Nimbus 2000 at breakfast the morning of his Quidditch match, but because they jumbled around the timeline of these events, we need to include that scene in this week's video as well. So we see the trio sitting at breakfast and Harry is hesitant to eat anything as he is nervous for the day. Severus Snape walks up and wishes Harry luck and adds a snide comment in there per usual, but the key thing to note is that as he is walking away, Harry notices that he is limping. He tells Ron and Hermione his theory about Snape trying to get at whatever the three-headed dog was guarding during the troll attack, but before they can get too into it, his Nimbus 2000 arrives. We then cut to the actual Quidditch game as they are about to walk onto the field. Wood asks Harry if he is nervous and then tries to comfort him a little by telling him about his first Quidditch game, which didn't end so well. They then start up the game and we witness many things happening: cheering fans, foul play, and no golden snitch. After Marcus Flint's foul on Wood, the Slytherins score a few points, and Harry finally spots the snitch and races after it. But before he can get to it, his broom starts acting up, flying and jerking around in all directions as if it's trying to knock him off. He barely hangs on as Ron and Hermione recognize that Snape seems to be muttering a jinx on the broom. Hermione, with lightning speed I might add, gets over to where Snape is sitting and sets his robe on fire, causing the whole group of wizards around them to freak out and fall over. This breaks the curse on the broom and Harry climbs back up. After he climbs back onto the broom, he sees the snitch again and dives after it along with the Slytherin Seeker. As they dive to the ground, the other Seeker chickens out and Harry pulls up just in time. Then he stands on the broom and falls forward, nearly swallowing the snitch. The game ends with Gryffindor winning, but there is still a mystery of what happened to Harry's broom. The scene cuts to the Golden Trio walking on the school grounds with Hagrid, telling him that Snape jinxed the broom, but Hagrid refuses to believe this. During the course of their conversation, they reveal that they know about the three-headed dog, and Hagrid accidentally tells him that it's named Fluffy, and he got him off a man at the pub. They also learn that Snape is one of the professors guarding whatever is in the castle, and finally, they learn that whatever is being guarded is strictly between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. And that is where our scenes end for this week. So far, we have quite a few changes just in these few short moments of the movie. Most of these changes revolve around Snape and the Quidditch game, so buckle up as we dive into the character changes. I can't go into every person we see in these scenes, as in the Harry Potter series, there are just way too many shown, so I'm going to be keeping it simple with someone who really isn't included in these scenes, but plays a small role in the book. And that person is Filch. Of course, I'll go over the details of his involvement in the plot changes, so stick around for that. As for timeline, there's just a tiny little change, which is that Harry's interaction with Snape happens the night before the Quidditch match, not at breakfast that morning. And finally, before we get to the plot changes, we have location. Of course, you might have guessed it, but the movie removed Hagrid's hut from this moment. They use it quite a bit later on, so I believe they just wanted a change of scenery. But in the book, they have tea at Hagrid's hut after the game. This makes a little more sense story-wise, because in the movie, they are talking about this top secret thing very loudly in the open. Imagine just walking around your school practically shouting, "I think my professor tried to kill me." Lastly, they also exclude the outside courtyard at Hogwarts, where a pretty crucial plot point happens with the Golden Trio, but we'll get there in a minute. Anyway, now that we've covered the first 3 categories of characters, timeline, and location, let's head into the plot changes. Of course, I can't go into every line of dialogue spoken, so if you're wanting to read the book for yourself and follow along with me every week as I do these episodes, you can claim your free trial of Audible using my link in the video description. You can get 1 free audiobook and you support the channel at the same time. Now, let's fly into these changes. To start, I'm going to open by summarizing the beginning of the chapter, as I have been for the last couple episodes. J.K. Rowling has this writing style that starts each chapter with a summary of events that have occurred in between the chapters, so it makes sense for this series to just quickly go over these key points that Harry addresses at the beginning of each chapter. This will help give us some context that the movie just doesn't. Of course, if the movie shows these points, then I just won't mention them, but each of these points are essentially things that were left out of the film. So, the chapter opens with Harry catching us up on everything that has happened since the troll attack on Halloween night. First, Harry says that the news of him becoming Seeker had somehow leaked out to the school, so people all week leading up to his first game had been telling him that he was going to be brilliant, or telling him that they'll hold a mattress under him for when he falls. Second, Harry mentions how it was great that Hermione was now his friend, as he didn't know how he would have made it through school without her help, as he was quite preoccupied with Quidditch practice. Plus, him coming from a Muggle family and not being intellectually inclined, like Hermione, he was not great in his classes. Finally, the third thing is that Hermione had lent Harry a book called Quidditch Through the Ages, which we'll get to in a later change, so keep that in mind. Now that we've done that summary, let's move on to the more substantial changes. The first thing we need to cover is the way that the movie displays Harry's interaction with, and theory about, Snape at breakfast. This brief moment condenses a decent amount of the chapter down for the film, but in the book, this interaction is completely different. First, although the book does include a small bit about Harry being nervous for the first Quidditch game during breakfast, Snape doesn't come up to Harry the morning of his game and wish him luck. However, he does have an encounter with the 3 students, which the movie completely omits. The day before the Quidditch match, the Golden Trio is standing in the courtyard during a break, with a small fire that Hermione had conjured inside a jar to keep them warm. While they were out there, Snape walked by, and Harry noticed that he was limping, just like they show in the breakfast scene. Since they believed that the self-conjured portable fire probably wasn't allowed, they huddle around it to block it from view, looking pretty suspicious. Although he didn't see the fire, Snape was looking for a reason to punish them, per usual, and asked Harry what he was holding. Harry presented Snape with the book, Quidditch Through the Ages, which is the one Hermione lent him that I mentioned earlier, and Snape tells him that library books aren't allowed outside the castle, and then took the book and deducted 5 points from Gryffindor. After he limped away, the trio remarked about how he definitely just made up that rule, and Harry wondered about what was wrong with his leg. This plays into the next change, as the movie completely changes how Harry finds out about Snape's leg. In last week's video, I told you how Harry never saw Snape's leg bleeding after the troll attack. Well, that is true, however he does see Snape's leg hurt at a different time. After heading back to the common room to go over Charm's homework, Harry tells Ron and Hermione that he is going back to get the book, as it is totally unfair that Snape took it. Ron and Hermione aren't keen on the idea, but Harry has a thought as to how Snape won't be able to refuse giving it back. So Harry, alone, heads out the Gryffindor Tower and makes his way to the staff room. After getting there, knocking on the door and hearing no answer, Harry cracked the door open in hopes that he might be able to grab the book himself if Snape left it in there. But what he saw was way more than he bargained for, as after cracking the door and peering inside, he sees Filch handing bandages to Snape, whose leg is bloody and mangled. He overheard Snape saying, "How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all 3 heads?" And Harry knew exactly what he was talking about. Trying to escape, Harry slowly closed the door, but was spotted by Snape before he could make it out. After getting yelled at to get out, Harry left Snape before he could take any more points from Gryffindor. Harry then ran back to the tower and told Ron and Hermione what he saw, and his conclusions, which we hear in the film during the breakfast scene. Between the limp and his eavesdropping in the teacher's room, Harry believes Snape tried to get past the 3-headed dog on Halloween. Now that we've covered Snape's involvement so far, let's jump ahead to the Quidditch match itself. To start, we have a smaller change, which is that the movies removed the Gryffindor's banner they made for Harry's first game. The book says that they made a sign out of a sheet that said Potter for President, and then Hermione put a charm on it that made it flash different colors. Also, Wood doesn't tell Harry that he got knocked out his first game. He simply gives a brief speech before the team walks out on the field, saying that this is the best team Gryffindor has had in years and that they're going to win. Also, this is one of Fred and George's funny moments, as they interrupt his speech, reciting it from heart and telling Harry that they know it word for word since they were on the team last year. As for the game itself, the first change is that Harry just sits on his broom for the first part of the game in the movie, and he looks like a real doofus. I mean, you're a Seeker. go seek. But in the book, they mention how even though the snitch hasn't been spotted yet, Harry has kept out of trouble and flown around. Harry even mentions how Wood's game plan for Harry was to keep him out of the way and search for the snitch. So far, they have put a massive emphasis in the book on how the Seeker is always getting targeted by the opposing team. Seamus tells this fact to Harry at breakfast, and Quidditch Through the Ages also seemed to make this point quite a bit, which is why Harry was so nervous. If he just sat on the broom not moving like they show in the movie, he definitely would have gotten clobbered. And speaking of Harry just sitting around, the snitch doesn't just fly in front of his face. Plus, even if it did hover around for a couple of seconds like it shows in the movie, why didn't he reach out to take it? Anyway, how it happens in the book is that Lee Jordan is actually the one who spots it first, as it flies past one of the Slytherin chasers who has the quaffle. Lee points out the snitch, and then Harry goes darting after it. The book also mentions how everyone pretty much stops playing once the Seekers go after the snitch, as they were all mesmerized and wanted to see what would happen, especially since it was Harry's first game. This chase then plays into the next change, which is Marcus Flint's foul. In the movie, Flint hits a bludger at Wood, knocking him to the ground. This doesn't happen in the book. Rather, Flint intentionally blocks Harry as the Seekers go after the snitch, and he knocks Harry way off course. I guess this is an intentional foul in Quidditch because Madam Hooch shouts at Flint and gives the Gryffindors a free shot at the hoops. And in all the confusion of this foul, the snitch was once again lost. A funny side note is Dean's remark that gets cut from the film. After the foul, Dean shouts, "Send him off, ref, red card," and Ron asks him what that means. It is funny to see how Dean, being a soccer or football fan, is trying to relate Quidditch to his real-world sport, much to the confusion of Ron and his other wizard classmates. Anyway, the next change is that after Flint's foul, the game resumes, and then Harry's broom acts up. It doesn't happen after he starts chasing the snitch like they show in the movie. The next change is that in the book, Hagrid is the one that says Harry looks like he's lost control of his broom, but then he says that it isn't possible as only dark magic can affect a broom. This is what prompts Hermione to look around and try to find Snape. Speaking of Hermione finding Snape, her interference with the supposed jinx is quite different in the book. First, as she's trying to get close to Snape, she bumps into Quirrell, knocking him over. This is what causes him to break eye contact with Harry, not Snape's fire like they show in the movie. Second, there isn't actually any major fire that gets the whole box of people watching in a panic. Remember when the trio is in the courtyard with Hermione's self-conjured blue flame in a jar? Well, that's the same thing that Hermione shoots at Snape's cloak. It takes a bit for Snape to realize that he's on fire, but once he does, he yells and she scoops the flame into a jar and runs off. Next, Harry catching the snitch is actually quite a quick moment in the book. It really only happens in one sentence. After getting back onto his broom, he dives to the ground, clamps his hand to his mouth as if he's about to throw up, and then falls to the ground. Only after getting up and spitting out the snitch and yelling, "I've got the snitch," does the crowd realize what happened. In the movie, they show him beating out the Slytherin Seeker to get the snitch, but the book doesn't mention a side-by-side dive. Also, the movie shows him falling off his broom and nearly swallowing the snitch because of it, but in the book, he ate the snitch before he fell off the broom. Plus, he never stands on his broom. That's a bit advanced, even for Harry. Our last couple of changes are mainly in regards to Hagrid's involvement after the match. Obviously, the first change is that they have their conversation over tea in Hagrid's hut, not on the school grounds walking around. Finally, on a very anticlimactic note, Hagrid bought Fluffy from a Greek chappie, not an Irish feller. Of course, you know the deal, I gotta mention everything I notice, even if it's that small. Anyway, that wraps up this week's analysis. So now I want to hear from you. What do you think about how the movie interpreted this Quidditch match? Did they do it justice, or should they have stuck closer to what was on the page? As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and check out the series playlist on my channel to catch up on any episodes that you might have missed. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode.